Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. During 1 year of Inside Iraq, we experienced the surge and the rise and decline of Al-Qaeda. So has Iraq reached the tipping point? Despite professed intentions, national reconciliation remains an elusive goal. With no miracle in sight to put an end to the current bloodbath, is there a way forward? Without crushing the militias and putting an end to their reign of terror, can Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki rescue his reputation as a sectarian politician and emerge as a national hero? Ayman Muhyiddin reports.
2007 began with the Iraqi government closing the chapter on a former president who was executed in December, the appointment of a new U.S. commander to savage what seemed as a doomed American policy in January. But the addition of nearly 30,000 troops, part of President Bush's surge policy, failed to bring a decrease in the number of civilian deaths. And 2007 was the deadliest year for U.S. forces in Iraq so far. Al-Qaeda remained a persistent problem, but were driven out and marginalized when locals in the predominantly Sunni province of Al-Anbar turned on them.
Security in Iraq has made a bit of progress, especially in Baghdad. This progress was achieved following the launch of the security plan last February. However, it seems that the achievement is not attributed only to the security plan and policing operations. The additional reasons can be political and intelligence efforts exerted by the United States with certain parts within the Iraqi government. These efforts were mainly directed towards the Iraqi Sunni tribes.
It was a brief but marginal measure of success in the war-torn country. Significant and spectacular attacks occurred despite progress by the Iraqi army taking the lead in various parts of the country. On the diplomatic front, the past 12 months have seen historic meetings and promises, but little improvement for Iraq and its neighbors. Despite face-to-face meetings between Iranian and American officials, the two sides continue to trade blame for the country's deadly violence. Sectarian strife in Iraq showed no signs of abating, with divisions in politics and in life hardening across ethnic lines. 4 million Iraqis have fled their homes, with many seeking refuge in nearby countries.
There's war, there's destruction, torture, rape and kidnappings. There's no education and no health system. Everything disappeared. There's no security and there's no peace, in addition to sowing sectarianism in Iraq.
And despite the surge, which was aimed at allowing political stability, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government remains ineffective, according to both U.S. estimates and Iraqi politicians who have pulled out of his coalition. The Iraqi government has yet to ratify an oil law, and national reconciliation efforts remain stagnant. Daily running battles between rival Shia groups and the Iraqi army have become a daily scene on Iraqi television. Security forces are widely believed to have been penetrated by criminals, and corrupt officials have siphoned billions of dollars. And the year that was described as critical for the U.S. endeavor has yet to deliver a better reality for ordinary Iraqis. Ayman Muhyiddin for Inside Iraq.
So what is the status of Iraq's balance sheet of profit and loss? Is Iraq getting ahead or sliding into a world of chaos? To help us take a snapshot of Iraq over the past year, I'm joined from Washington by former chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Richard Myers, and from Istanbul by Syrian Minister of Expatriates, Dr. Buthayna Sha'ban, and from Baghdad by Mithal al-Alusi, an Iraqi member of parliament and leader of Al-Ummah al-Iraqiyya Party, Iraqi Nation Party. Welcome to Inside Iraq. General Myers, let me start with you. Looking at this balance sheet, how do you look at it? Is the color of the ink on it, is it black, is it red? Pardon the pun, but are we making progress or are we sliding into chaos?
I think the Iraqis are making progress with the help of the United States and other nations that are trying to help in the country. If you take a look at the security piece, the violence right now is the lowest levels it's been since January of 2006. Attacks are also down, and the trend since June of this year has been a continuing downward trend in attacks, both on civilians and on coalition military and Iraqi military and police in the country. So I think from a security standpoint, things are definitely better in 2007 and have gotten better since the start of this year.
A rosy picture depicted by General Myers, Dr. Buthayna Sha'ban, I am surprised that he did not mention that the Al-Qaeda, which ran supreme at the beginning of the year, now has been blunted and routed out of Iraq. So what is your take on that?
Nor did he mention the almost 2 million Iraqis that have flooded into Syria the last year. I think General Meyer is phrasing it in a language that pre the war and the services were before the war need to be corrected. I mean, for a country to have cholera now really rife in Iraq, 10% only of Iraqi children go to school, total lack of security. I don't think General Meyer himself would like to go to Iraq and walk on the street. He should come to Syria and meet some of these Iraqi women and children who are maimed, who desperately need medical care. I think the problem with this description is that it goes beyond and above the human suffering, the human catastrophe that happened to the Iraqi people, and it certainly deteriorated during 2007.
Well, I don't think anybody looking at the security situation can say anything except that it's better now. Now, of course, when a country is torn apart like Iraq's been torn apart, the ravages of war are apparent, and they're terrible and they're tragic. But the progress has been very, very visible, especially at the local level. And you mentioned the Al-Qaeda used to be a very powerful force for the most dramatic bombings, if you will, inside Iraq. You can't say they've been eradicated because the Al-Qaeda will continue to live on, but they have been decimated inside Iraq, which was a huge issue because they were trying to stir up the sectarian violence. Without them, most of that violence will now has started to subside.
But I would just like to say that Al-Qaeda was not there before the war in Iraq. I think we have to look at the picture. The Pentagon report said there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq before the American forces came to Iraq. So whose responsibility is all this mess in Iraq and all the tragedy of the Iraqi people? I think this question has to be addressed when we talk about the situation, whether it's better or worse after the war. It's certainly worse.
General Myers alluded to the failure of Iraqis to come together under an umbrella of national reconciliation. Many people say the current leadership is incapable of national reconciliation simply because their agenda is not nationalist, but it's sectarian. As a member of parliament and a member of a rather sizable party, Al-Ummah Al-Iraqiyya, the Iraqi nation, how do you look at this failure?
First of all, I think we have a clearly war situation between Iraq as a nation, between Iraq as a state and the political process, and our neighbors who they are supporting Al-Qaeda. I was so wondering that the lady, she was mentioning Al-Qaeda, and she did forget that the car bombs has been exported to us from Syria and Iran. People who they have became the real support to make terrorist attack here, they came through the border. This is fact number one. Number two, what we have to say it, we are doing well. If we compare Baghdad today with Baghdad just 3 months ago, the difference is huge. People coming back and leaving Syria and leaving other countries and coming back to Baghdad.
Let me pose this to Dr. Buthaina. Over the past 2-3 years, and perhaps even from the get-go, Syria and Iran emerged as the regular suspect. You are destabilizing Iraq, Dr. Buthaina Shaban.
We stood against the war on Iraq. I think everybody in this world agrees that it is the American war on Iraq that created this situation. 2 days ago, we took all the diplomatic and the media corps to the borders. We established 500 points on the border. The Americans and the Iraqis established none. I think what Mr. Al-Lusi is mentioning is a very old story that even the Americans no longer believe in it. The problem in Iraq is a problem of American occupation of Iraq, of American forces in Iraq, and the Iraqi people are fighting this occupation, and that is the story. Syria has a stake in the stability and security and peace of Iraq.
Perhaps no longer the U.S. believes Syria is the culprit, but definitely, John Myers, the U.S., especially American commanders on the ground, believe Iran is the culprit behind all that we see about the EPFs and the IEDs, as well as some of the sophistication in training and arms.
Well, a couple of points. One is the intelligence was overwhelming that Syria was the conduit through which a lot of the foreign fighters funneled in to support Al-Qaeda inside Iraq. And Syria did little to stop that flow, either through the inability to do so or their unwillingness to do so. And Iran, of course, has played a crucial role because through funding and some technology, some equipment, some of the bomb-making equipment you mentioned, and that's indisputable too. We have serial numbers that can trace it right back to Iran. We know where these devices came from. So that is not helpful when you have a country that's trying to emerge from a dictatorship that was so brutal and so horrible, and they have a chance to express their own free will. And I can see why Syria and I can see why Iran wouldn't like that, because those are two countries where the people of those countries can't express their own free will.
Dr. Buthaina Sha'ban, you in Syria and in Tehran, you are scared of the democracy in Iraq.
I think what General Myers is saying makes everybody in the Middle East laugh, with full respect. The intelligence information you're talking about, General Myers, is the same intelligence that told the world that the Americans are going to Iraq because of WMD. That is absolutely proven in Iraq. Would you please check this intelligence? I tell you, it is mainly Israeli intelligence that aims at dividing and partitioning Iraq and destroying the Arab world. Syria is not a dictatorship. I don't think you as an American is proud of what you did in Iraq. This is not a liberty, this is not the freedom, this is colonialism, occupation, and stealing the Iraqi oil. This is bluntly what it is.
Are you saying, Buthaina Sha'ban, that all these Arab fighters and the suicide bombers are not coming through Syria, and Syria does not turn a blind eye to their presence and to their entry into Iraq?
Well, I will tell you what I'm saying. Syria has asked the Americans time and over again, give us one name you know that was coming through Syria into Iraq, somebody you held.
In the US, they say, show me the proof. Why has the US so far has not shown the culpability of Syria, but managed tremendously to do that against Iran?
We could show the culpability. I'm no longer in the government, but that would be an easy thing to do. I've been to the border. I know the troops that have been to the border. The Syrians are almost incapable of, maybe they can put on a show for the media, but they are incapable of controlling that border. Those are trade routes that have been existent for thousands of years, and they're very difficult to control in any case. But you can certainly control Damascus airport.
There is a law on the book passed during Ayad Allawi's premiership calling for the disbandment of all these militias, and yet they grow like mushroom. How do you explain this? Right now, they shifted their base of operations from Baghdad. They went south, and there is running battles between the Iraqi army and the American army against Jaysh al-Mahdi and Faylaq Badr. Without crushing them, can you see an end to this nightmare?
Yeah, for sure. I believe that we are in the right way. I believe Baghdad today, regarding the militia and their influence, is not the same like a few months ago. We have changed the situation. As I told you, the security situation is, we cannot compare it with yesterday. This is for sure. I think we are doing well. We need time, and we need from our neighbors to have a normal relationship and to stop those terrorists and to stop supporting those militias. Our delegation, the Prime Minister and many Iraqi ministers who they have visited Damascus to talk about the Syrian influence, they have given the proof to the Syrian politician and to the Syrian government.
I really don't think it's useful for our viewers to talk about things that are unrealistic. If I'm still witnessing 30 Iraqis killed every day, you know, that is not an improvement, and that's not a good situation. And for Syria, the president said many times, our president, give us one example, announce it to the media. You know, why do you do it in secret? If you have some people that you caught, if you have some people that you think Syria, you know, allows them to go,
Dr.
just put them in the media, put them on television.
Dr. Buthaina Sha'ban, we'll take a short break now. We'll continue our discussion after the break. Stay with us.
Our strategy in Iraq is guided by the principle of return on success. And as we are seeing more success, we are bringing some of our forces home. George Bush, US President.